Hello all, I'm Marin. Welcome to another reading vlog. It is March, which means it is time to celebrate middle grade March. I wanted to do one of these vlogs last year and never got around to it, so we are gonna go ahead and do that now and actually read some middle grade and vlog it. So I do own 2 books that I want to read physically, and then I have another one on my Kindle. So let me take you through a quick TBR. I will be reading The Blackbird Girls by Anne Blankman, which was the book I was supposed to read last year and didn't read. This one I have owned for a couple of years. I'll read you the synopsis on this one in a minute because this is the one we're going to start with. I will also be reading Blood in the Water by Tiffany D. Jackson, which I picked up at the Scholastic Book Fair. And then the final book is Inside Out and Back Again by Thang Ha Lai, and it's a novel in verse. So those are the 3 books you're going to see me reading in this vlog. We're going to go ahead and start though with The Blackbird Girls. I'm particularly looking forward to this one because I have read from this author before and really enjoyed her, so let me just read you the synopsis. This says, on a spring morning, neighbors Valentina Kaplan and Oksana Savchenko wake up to an angry red sky. A reactor at the nuclear power plant where their fathers work, Chernobyl, has exploded. Before they know it, the 2 girls who have always been enemies find themselves on a train bound for Leningrad to stay with Valentina's estranged grandmother, Rita Grigorievna. Yeah. In their new lives in Leningrad, they begin to learn what it means to trust another person. Oksana must face the lies her parents told her all her life. Valentina must keep her grandmother's secret, one that could put all their lives in danger. And both of them discover something they've wished for, a best friend. But how far would you go to save your best friend's life? Would you risk your own? Told in alternating perspectives among 3 girls, Valentina and Oksana in 1986 and Rivka in 1941, this story shows that hatred, intolerance, and oppression are no match for the power of true friendship. So that's going to be the book I start with. Obviously, it's historical fiction. We're talking about the Chernobyl power plant nuclear explosion and also the Holocaust in 1941, I believe in Ukraine, because that is where this story takes place before they are forced to leave because of the explosion at Chernobyl. So this will be the book I'm starting with. Also, apologies for my voice. I am dealing with a cold, so if I sound a little weird throughout this vlog, that's why. But anyway, let's get reading. All right, all. I am almost halfway through Blackbird Girls, so I wanted to go ahead and do a little update because I have a feeling I'm going to finish the rest of this at work today. So I've already read you the synopsis of this, but just as a little recap, we are following 2 main girls and then a 3rd POV. So we have Valentina and Oksana. They are from Pripyat and have left Pripyat due to the nuclear meltdown of Reactor 4 at Chernobyl. And they have traveled to Leningrad to stay with Valentina's grandmother. Oksana's mother had too high of a radiation dosage, so she was sent to a hospital in Minsk, Belarus. So Oksana's kind of on her own. So Valentina and her mother kind of take her in, and then the 2 girls now have had to travel by themselves up to Valentina's grandmother. So at the point that I'm at, the girls have become sort of friends. Previously, Oksana was very mean to Valentina because Valentina's family is Jewish, and Oksana was raised to believe that the Jewish people are liars, thieves, etc. by her father. I do want to give a trigger warning for abuse, child abuse, because Oksana's father is abusive towards her, and while we don't see it spelled out on the page, we see the aftermath spelled out. So Oksana has an injury that they talk about in one of the chapters that I just finished. So those are the 2 present day POVs, of course, 1986, around the time that the Chernobyl disaster happened. Then we are following a POV from 1941, Rivka, who we know is Valentina's grandmother's POV. And her story is all about escaping Kyiv, Ukraine, to get away from the Nazis who have pushed into the Soviet Union and are going to do the horrible things that they do. So Rivka's mother sends her away And she is trying to make her way to, as she calls it, one of the stands. So Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, etc. Because they are hoping that that will be far enough away from where the Nazis are that she will be safe. So she is on that journey. So those are kind of our 3 POVs. The one thing that stood out to me happened actually really early in the book. So this book starts off the day after the Chernobyl disaster. So I should say like the morning of, because it happened late night into the early morning. And so we start off the book with that morning. And they obviously were lying to the people, well, across the entire Soviet Union, but in particular Pripyat, for those first few days, trying to tell them that everything was fine. And then all of a sudden they announce an evacuation, and they again lie and say that they're only going to be gone for a few days. And so they tell everybody that they have to be on the street ready to go in like 2 hours. And the scene that stood out to me was Valentina and Oksana's teacher, who was standing with her bag, holding her cat, ready to evacuate. And she is told she cannot bring the cat with her. So the teacher is forced to leave the cat and just go. And I just, like, that breaks my heart, because obviously I have 2 kittens right now and I cannot even imagine the thought of having to leave them behind. But when I read Midnight in Chernobyl last year, which I'll put the cover right here, would highly recommend that one. It's a nonfiction look at exactly what happened with Chernobyl. We find out in that book that they were not allowed to bring their pets. And then a firing squad, for lack of a better word, was sent into Pripyat to essentially wipe out all of the pets that had been left behind, because they were worried about them carrying radiation outside of Pripyat. And I just, like, the whole idea is horrifying. And it actually turned out that a lot of the people who were supposed to be there to round up the pets were like unable to do it, and they let them go. Some people even like snuck back into Pripyat to get their pets and then leave. So yeah, I mean, that's what really stood out to me in that first section. I just cannot even imagine. And there's like an image, one of the girls looks backwards and just sees the cat like sitting in the middle of the road, like watching the bus leave. Like, I just cannot. So that was really like well written, like a visceral reaction for me. So the other thing that I wanted to just quickly mention is that the evacuation of Pripyat was like completely half done. These people were put on buses and sent places, and then they got there and they had like nowhere to go. So it's just shocking to think about like how much more interested the Soviet Union was in covering things up than actually helping their people. So anyway, that is what stood out to me for the first part of this. But Oksana and Valentina are now enrolled in a school in Leningrad and are trying to get back to some kind of normal. So the chapter that I just finished was a Rivka chapter, and she is now being forced to travel by herself. She was traveling with a cousin, something has happened, and she is now being forced to go on by herself. So I'm on chapter 22, and as I said, I do think I'm going to have this done today, so I will give you full thoughts then. I have read a series from this author previously, so I had pretty high expectations. The series that I read started with Prisoner of Night and Fog, which I really, really liked. That is a YA book that is set during the Holocaust, and obviously this one is middle grade. Valentina and Oksana are 11 years old, but I have found this completely engaging, very, I don't want to say entertaining, but I'm definitely, as I said, engaged. I'm finding it very interesting. If you look at her author's note in the back, she did a lot of research. She interviewed people and things like that before she wrote this, which is what she did with her YA series as well. So yes, so far it's going really, really well, and I'm really glad to have finally given this a read. This was supposed to be read last year for middle grade March, and I failed spectacularly. So figured I'd start with this one this year to make sure I actually get it read. But yeah, so far so good. I will let you know final ratings and things like that once it's done, but definitely a very good book, and I'm curious to see how their stories are all going to be wrapped up. Okay, I have finished the Blackbird Girls and I really enjoyed this. And I'm giving it 5 stars. I thought this was just really phenomenally written. It evokes all kinds of emotion, particularly at the end, I would say the last 2-ish chapters. And I just felt like this was a really accessible book for the age group that it's meant for. So this would be a good introduction kind of to the Holocaust and also Chernobyl in a way that middle grade readers would understand. And I just thought it was really well done. She's definitely a great author when it comes to historical fiction. So the author does have like a little bit of a personal connection to the Chernobyl disaster because some neighbors of hers were from Ukraine and were evacuated basically after the disaster. And then once the Soviet Union collapsed, they were able to get tickets and paperwork and things to get into the United States, which is where the author met them. And so she has kind of that personal connection, and she was able to use some of their story in this book, and they were inspiration for some of the characters. And another thing that I really liked at the end is she has some resources that are things that you can look up or contact if you are experiencing abuse, because the abuse does become more spelled out on the page in the latter half of the book. Oksana ends up leaving Valentina and her grandmother and going back with her mother, and her mother is in another relationship with an abusive man, and that is spelled out on the page. Her mother actually also participates in the abuse, which had never happened to her prior to that. And we also did get like a flashback of her telling Valentina what her father did to her. So there is some abuse like explicit on the page, so just be forewarned. But again, I felt like it was done in a way that's just very accessible for the middle grade audience, and I really, really enjoyed this. I think if you are a fan of historical fiction, even if you don't typically read middle grade, you would really enjoy this. So 5 stars for this. Really, really enjoyed this. So now I'm going to be switching gears to a totally different genre for the second book in this vlog, and that is going to be Blood on the Water by Tiffany D. Jackson. I picked this one up from the Scholastic Book Fair in October when my school had its book fair, and I've been curious about this one. This one's pretty short. The audiobook I think is only like 3.5 hours, like at the speed that I'm listening to it. So this might get done today. I'm not really sure. I have a full schedule of classes today, but I'm gonna go ahead and read you the synopsis and then let you know some initial thoughts because I have just started it. Okay, so this one says, Brooklyn girl Kaylani McKinnon feels like a fish out of water. She's spending the summer with family friends in their huge house on Martha's Vineyard, and the vibe is definitely snooty. Still, there are beautiful beaches, lots of ice cream, and a town full of fascinating Black history, plus a few kids her age who seem friendly. Until the shocking death of a teenage boy. Was it a drowning, a shark attack, or the unthinkable? Murder. Kaylani is determined to solve the mystery, but her investigation uncovers shattering secrets that could change her own life as she knows it if she survives. So that is the synopsis for this one. And already in the first few chapters, we're getting kind of that unsettling vibe. Kalani is the daughter of a man who is in prison currently. She believes her father is innocent, and why he's in prison has not been spelled out yet, like on the page, so we're not really sure exactly what has happened. But at this point in chapter 6, Kalani is definitely experiencing some classism from the family that she's staying with. So the family is 2 grandparents who own the house on Martha's Vineyard, and then their granddaughters who attend like a private school and definitely have some thoughts in their head about Kalani and her family and where she comes from, because Kalani is from Brooklyn and lives in an apartment. She attends public school, so they're definitely looking down on her already at this point. And at one point, the grandmother actually says something along the lines of, we always help the less fortunate, don't we? Like she tells her granddaughter. And so there's definitely like this, like, we're helping you because you're like a charity case vibe already. Like, and I've only gotten like this far in. So I'm very curious to see what's going on. There is a boy that Cassie, the older sister, is interested in. And we've met Chadwick, that's the boy, and I wonder if he's going to be the one that they're talking about, like the shocking death, because he's just gotten very weird in like a conversation and like excused himself from that conversation. So I'm wondering if he's going to be the one that does not survive this. So anyway, there's a lot of mention of how Martha's Vineyard was like a safe space for Black families who were escaping slavery and like the Jim Crow laws and all of that. Although again, we're not very far into it, so I'm hoping that it'll go a little bit more into that because I personally love history. But yeah, so far so good. The audiobook is well narrated thus far, and I feel like this is just going to be a very quick read. So yes, I'm currently like right in the middle of chapter 6, and I will see how much I can get read today, but there you go. That's going to be the next book for this vlog, so let me get back to reading. Okay, y'all, I have finished Blood in the Water, and I think I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. I did quite enjoy it, but I am obviously not the target age group for this, so I wouldn't say that I found anything particularly surprising or shocking, but I did feel like it did a good job of having those unsettling vibes that you want from a mystery thriller, because I would say that even though it has the word blood in the title, this is not really horror, which Tiffany D. Jackson is kind of known for. This is definitely more of like a middle grade mystery thriller. So it takes a good amount of time before the truth of things comes out in this book. But again, once the reveals happen, I did not find anything particularly surprising. I kind of had it pegged a little bit regarding some of what was going on, so it wasn't surprising to me. But I did still really enjoy this, and I feel like this is a very accessible introduction to the mystery thriller genre. So I do think that it definitely has some intrigue, and there is a lot of discussion regarding class and things like that. And also, I did learn a few things. So I did not know really the history of Martha's Vineyard and its place in African American culture. So that was very interesting to read about. And yeah, I did very much enjoy this. I think if you have liked Tiffany D. Jackson's writing in the past, go ahead and give it a read, but I don't think it's going to be what you're expecting based on her YA books. I'll just say that. But this was very enjoyable. It only took me a couple of hours to read, and 3.5 stars. So very much enjoyed this. There is like a standalone sequel-ish, I think, companion novel or something coming out. I do not remember what it's called, but I'll put the cover right here. I saw it mentioned maybe on Goodreads, I don't remember. I may check that one out. I'll see if the Scholastic Book Fair has that one. We are doing a fair in April, so I might pick it up if it's available like in the paperback, so I can have both of them in paperback. The version I saw has like sprayed edges and is a hardcover though, so I'm not sure if it's going to be middle grade or if it's going to be YA. I don't know. Anyway, that's the cover, so you can check that out if you're interested. But yes, I did enjoy this. I wouldn't say go out of my way to read it, but it was a good time, a good way to spend a couple of hours. Now, the next book I'm going to read is this one right here. This one has been on my Kindle, oh geez, probably for over 10 years. And it's very short because it is a novel in verse, so I expect to be back with you pretty quickly to talk about that one. I forgot to bring my phone in with me when I sat down to film this, so I can't give you the synopsis, so I'll do that when I do the update. But that one's not going to take me very long at all, so you will probably see me a little bit later on today once I have finished reading that one, because I think it's only going to take like maybe an hour, hour and a half to get through the audio. So here we go. All right, all, I have finished Inside Out and Back Again. This is written by Thang Ha Lai. I tried really hard to pronounce that right. I listened to her say it like 15 times. Anyway, this is a I guess it's kind of like an autobiography, but I believe it's shelved as like fiction, but I'm going to go ahead and read you the synopsis even though I have finished it. So this says, for all the 10 years of her life, Ha has only known Saigon, the thrills of its markets, the joy of its traditions, and the warmth of her friends close by. But now the Vietnam War has reached her home. Ha and her family are forced to flee as Saigon falls, and they board a ship headed toward hope in America. Ha discovers the foreign world of Alabama, the coldness of its strangers, the dullness of its food, and the strength of her very own family. So I am giving this 4 stars. I felt like it was a very powerful little novel in verse. So it is written in pretty sparse language, which works really well because we are getting the POV of a young girl who is not fully aware of everything that's going on around her. So I felt like the sparse language really worked in terms of how this was written, particularly when she comes to the United States and she is trying to learn English. So obviously she starts off speaking a little bit more brokenly, and that came across really well in that novel in verse format. I especially liked the woman who takes her in and starts tutoring her and teaching her English and like the rules of English, which are crazy to learn from like an outside POV. She mentions a lot how in Vietnamese there are certain things that they don't do with their words. So things like the ball or a man, they don't have those descriptors, those articles, and because of that, English is more challenging. And I think that's actually the case for a lot of languages. But so I felt like the sparseness of the language really worked well for this book. I particularly liked how the book was pretty evenly divided between her life in Vietnam and then her life in America. I found it very interesting. I learned a few things that I was not aware of. She is one of the lucky ones who is able to escape Saigon right before the city falls and turns into Ho Chi Minh City. So I just really liked this book. This is a Newbery Honor book, I think from 2011 or something like that, but I really liked it. Very, very quick read. It took me like an hour to listen to the audiobook, and I felt like the narrator did a great job with the audio because with that you were able to hear the proper pronunciations of towns, people's names, that sort of thing, and I felt like that really brought the story to life. So I would recommend the audio, and all in all it was a great way to spend an hour or so because it was a very short book, but I really liked it. Very impactful, very powerful, and it's written in a way that makes that part of history accessible to younger readers. So that is the final book for this vlog, which means we have reached the end. That is my little celebration of middle grade March. I feel like I had a pretty good reading time. I had 1 5-star with the Blackbird Girls. Highly recommend this one. Definitely check this out. And then I gave 3.5 stars to Blood in the Water by Tiffany D. Jackson. Again, it's worth a read if you find it, but you don't necessarily have to go out of your way for it unless you're a big fan of her writing. And then 4 stars for Inside Out and Back Again. So all in all, pretty good week of reading middle grade. I had a good time. I don't read a lot of middle grade, so it's always nice to kind of revisit the genre. I used to read a lot more of it back in my earlier days as a K-6 librarian, but now I don't really read as much middle grade. So anyway, that's going to do it for this vlog. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more from me. If you made it to the end of the video and would like to leave an emoji to show you were here, you can leave a shark emoji. I'm assuming there's a shark emoji in honor of Blood in the Water because there is a little plot point here where they think it might be a shark that attacks the boy who is found dead in the water. So yeah, shark emoji for this one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.